than 5 or 6 years of my experience that I'm working in IT, like in development sector. And recently I have assignments with related to .NET Core, Angular frameworks, and I have worked most of the ERP projects, like having the UI and then the end user UI and the admin UI. And then in Angular, I have worked on version 13, and I'm familiar with .NET Core 3.1 framework. And side by side, I have worked on ASP.NET framework using MVC design pattern. And on database side, I'm well versed with Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, MongoDB, and along with cloud computing, I'm familiar with Azure. So I used to work on such kind of frameworks.
Okay, so have you done any certification on Azure?
Not exactly. Like we have resources for development, deployment thing, and then using DevOps for task management and source control management.
Okay, and in Azure, what are the services that you have majorly used?
I have used like there is a service to schedule notifications like Hangfire.
Okay.
So I have worked with it.
So any exposure to say function app, logical app, or like the like Docker and Kubernetes, like AKS and other stuff, and pipelines.
Pardon. Yes, pipelines I'm familiar with. It is to deploy the published code. When we just merge our feature branch with master branch, we used to pipeline it, and it automatically deploys to either to the staging server or the live server, whichever we have pointed it with.
Okay.
So I'm familiar with pipelines.
So what is your repository?
Repository name?
Which code repository you are currently using?
For coding purpose?
Yeah, for like storing code, which source code control you are using?
Okay, it's we are using Git.
Okay, you are using Git, and that Git is like that it is pointed to your Azure repo, right?
Yes.
So have you configured any repo, or you are using it?
I am using it, but earlier I have worked with Bitbucket to upload my code. Like we used to do initial commit. Even with Git also, I'm familiar with configuring it.
Yeah, Bitbucket is similar to GitHub, right? GitLab.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
Atlassian. Okay. Yeah. So how about API? Have you worked with API or microservices?
I have developed a microservice. It was to post some files to S3 bucket, Amazon S3 bucket. And for that I have written some code, like we have PowerShell scripting. So for that I have created microservice which runs the PowerShell script to post the files to S3 bucket. So this kind of work I have done. Also I have created a microservice to schedule emails.
Okay.
Yeah, that was based on daily, then monthly. So this kind of microservices I have created. Other than this, if I talk about my recent assignment, it was to build web APIs on .NET Core framework. And for authentication purpose, I have integrated Identity Server 4. It returns the JWT token for the user. And on Angular side, I have consumed it in the request header.
Okay.
To pass.
Got you. Okay, fine. So let us start from like .NET, basically some basic question of .NET. So can you tell me what are the major pillars are there in object-oriented programming? What are the major pillars that are available in object-oriented programming?
Okay, first one is the inheritance. Like we have multiple inheritance and then single inheritance and such things. And for inheritance, for multiple inheritance, we use interfaces in C#, and we can just define our methods or the variables in the interface, and then we need to implement them to the class where we want to use it. And then there is abstraction. We used to do abstraction of the code, encapsulation, wrapping up the important things into the single class. And then we have DI, dependency injection, and I have used constructor dependency injection. Like we used to create services and then we need to register those services in this type of project.
Okay,
And
got
then
it, got it. But DI, dependency injection, is not part of major pillars, right? It is not part of major pillar. Okay, fine.
okay.
So you have worked. So let's assume a scenario that you have a class, and that
Okay.
class has some data members. You have created as a employee class, and then it has some data members, say some methods, some properties.
Okay.
So what will be the default scope of that particular class or members?
As far as I remember, if I used to create a class, suppose I create a class, it is not declared as a public class. I manually need to set it to public so that I can expose its data members.
So what if you didn't mention anything, like you didn't mention any access modifier? Then what will be the default scope?
I think it will remain as an internal class.
Okay. And how about the data members, properties and method?
Honestly, I haven't experimented it with, but I think they won't be exposed. I would not be able to consume them.
Right. So
outside
it
the
will be
class.
private, right?
Yeah, private.
Okay, got it. Okay. So have you used private constructor by any chance?
No, I have always used public constructors. Even for DI, we can have multiple constructors. Sorry for the call. We can have multiple constructors. Suppose I can set a parameterized constructor of the same class and along with the non-parameterized.
Okay.
So this I know, but I haven't worked.
You haven't got any chance to work. So haven't you worked with singleton design pattern by any chance?
No, I heard about it, but no.
Okay.
Never worked with it.
No problem. So how you have handled exception in your project?
First of all, I used to go with try and catch block, and then suppose whatever the exception I have. Sometimes we used to throw user-friendly exceptions to let the user know and resolve the action according to it. And other than, if we have unhandled exceptions, then I used to return it from the catch. Either return, that could be the requirement of the front-end part, or otherwise I use loggers. Suppose one of them is nlog. I used to log the exception so that I can go just to the log file and check whatever the exception has been there and troubleshoot it accordingly.
Okay. So you talk about throw keyword, right? So we can say write throw, simple throw, or you can even write throw ex exception, or you can even write throw new exception. So what is the difference between all three?
I have always used throw x because we used to take exception in the catch, and I always work with throwing
So what if you use throw new exception and you have defined some exception inside it? What will happen if you write throw new exception?
I think it will break the code right away and it will return to the user interface. Like whatever I'll mention in the exception, it will just reflect it on the UI. Or we may get it in the console of the browser.
No, it won't break the code if you use throw new. So throw new, basically you are overriding your existing exception object. So you can create a new message, say passing throw new exception, and you can pass the exception like you got a file not found exception.
Yeah.
So user specific exception you can pass, but ideally we should not, because it will rewrite our exception stuff like.
Yes.
So you worked on .NET Core 3.1, right?
Yes, sir.
So any advantage that you feel like working in .NET Core, since you have worked in both the framework, being a developer, any advantage that you found, that you feel?
For .NET Core, one of the major pros I would say is providing SPA, single page application templates. And then its content part is always kept into www root thing, and it's a lightweight application, very it's the.
Yeah, so you are talking about like a .NET Core with MVC, but I'm talking about normal .NET Core framework. So if you talk about .NET Core, say we can create API, we can create MVC, or you can create even background task also. So what are the advantage of using this framework?
Sorry, sir. Actually, I have worked with it, but I haven't. I didn't get a chance to study about it much. But I know it's a lightweight framework, and it provides more modularity. And even if I integrated with Blazor, like Blazor is also there in .NET Core. So from Blazor, we can directly call our services. We don't need to create controller things, like if we want to optimize it in the terms of performance. So these kind of work I have done with.
Okay, so you talked about dependency injection. So
Yes.
do you know some dependency injection ready-madely available with .NET Core?
I think it's the constructor dependency.
But .NET Core provides three major service dependencies, right? Add transient, add scope, and add singleton.
Yes, sir. It depends upon the request lifespan. Like we want to keep the object instantiated throughout the application scope, and if we want to limit it to the current request, so these three methods work according to that.
Right. So have you used middleware by any chance in .NET Core?
Middleware, one of them which I have worked was to set custom authentication. Like there was a requirement that I need to use custom authentication. For that, I need to edit the attribute to the controllers for controllers. And before authenticating the user with the default thing, I need to validate some code kind of thing. So for that, I have implemented middleware.
Okay, so let's assume you are having an API project in .NET Core, and in API project in .NET Core provides middleware where you can play with the request and response. We also have filter, right, where also we can control our request and response. So what is the difference between having middleware or having these filters?
Interview is going on, man. Sorry, sir.
No
It's
issue.
one
No
brother.
problem. No
I'm
problem.
really sorry.
Yeah.
He didn't know that. I'm sorry. So can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, so in .NET Core we have filters, and we also have dependent middleware. So can you tell me a specific use case where we can use filter and where we should use a middleware?
The requirement which I just talked about, like to add custom authorization, for that I had to add authorized called filter, and which is an attribute. And for middleware, like as far as I can remember, I can recall, in .NET Core we used to set app.use middleware in configure method.
Right.
So that we can do.
No, so that app.add middleware, you can also read the request, you can also alter the request, and you can also deny the request, right? So that you have the all possibility. So even the filter is also doing the same. Okay, if it is not authorized, you are not allowing to access the controller. So my question is that in which case we should use middleware and in which case we should use filter? Any specific case that you can recall?
Maybe that is with only authentication thing.
But authentication, in fact, we can even put it in middleware these days. Like if you wish, apart from login session, even authentication can even handle from middleware. Okay, no problem. So can you open your share your screen and open the code editor once?
Code editor?
Yeah, I think you have a code editor in the left side.
In the left side?
Just check if you can see the code editor.
Leader view. Is it whiteboard?
I think it. Let me see. No, not white.
No. If you.
Yeah, please go on.
Like Poonam, you can see there is a code editor button on the left hand of your screen.
Let me see.
Yeah, it is there is an angular symbol above the call and button.
Angular. Okay.
Yeah.
The code editor. Okay.
Yeah. You can click on.
Okay. Yes, I have clicked on it.
Okay.
Sir, is Poonam's screen is visible to you with that code editor?
So I can see a gray screen basically.
Yeah, 1 second. Sir, you can refresh your tab, okay? Maybe there could be some connectivity issue, that's why it's not appearing. Just refresh your tab.
So you are
The entire tab. Okay.
No, Poonam, I can't see it. Can you please do it again?
Okay.
First, share your screen. Click on the three dots. Third option, share screen. After you can go to the code editor.
Okay. Okay. Let me know if my screen is visible.
Yeah,
Now we can see now. If you go to the center of the screen, go to the code editor and yes. Sir, guide her which language she has to use.
so you can select C#.
Okay.
So I have pasted one small class. Can you copy and paste it in your chat, like in your code editor? Yeah, so I mean formatting is like somewhere it got messed up. So you can see it is a simple class which has a parameterized constructor and has a getter setter property. Okay. So I have pasted one more line. Can you copy it?
Can I just type it? Where LST?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so like since this chat doesn't support Angular bracket, so you put an Angular bracket and copy email data and paste inside it. Basically a list of class. You got it right? In list, after list, instead of a first bracket, you put an Angular bracket and paste email data. Okay, yeah, right. So can you say add your first name and last name inside this list object?
Pardon, I did not get you.
Can you add your first name and last name inside this LST object?
Sure.
Not here. You can from second line you try to add your first name and last name. Let it be defined here.
Okay.
In the next line onwards, you try to add.
Got it. Data. Just a second. I can simply do list.add and this object. So please check.
So you are done, right?
Right.
Just give me a second. Let me take a screenshot. Okay, so you have added new email data, and then this is you have given a second bracket or first bracket after that. I cannot see you, like this is font is so small.
The font is small. Can I paste it in the chat?
No, that is fine. So you have given a second brace, right?
Actually, sorry, sir, I didn't get you.
No,
I
that
just
is fine.
added.
Got it.
I just added the model of email data type to list.
Okay, just give me a second. Okay, this looks fine. Just a second. So have you worked with generics?
Like generic repository?
It's not about repository, like a generic class, generic interface, generic method.
Yes.
So can you tell me some example of generic and non-generic collection?
If I talk about generic method, like we always have a utility in our project. Like we create an entire application, and we used to have some common methods which we need to use on multiple, I would say, logics, in multiple logics. Suppose email sender function is there, so I used to create a generic email sending function which will receive or which will accept parameters of different body and the recipient's email address, and then I'll be having a single configuration file in which I'll keep my senders senders settings, like we have SMTPs.
Got your point. Yeah, fine. So I have pasted one more class. Can you just copy and paste it in your code editor?
Okay. I think I need to go back.
So can you tell me, like you have a class basically, and then you have can you tell me what exactly happening here? Can you explain?
Okay, this is the T type of entity. It will take T type of entity. This reminds me of using generic repositories. Like we always need to write the CRUD operation functions only in the single file, and we used to send any type of entity to that class, and it will that file will work for that particular entity. Like suppose if I send employee entity to this T type of class, it will work for employees table, and if I send any other entity, suppose the department, so it will work for that also. So generic T acts as generic, and it will be working for every entity whichever we send.
Here it will accept only class, right? Because we have restricted to it to class.
Right.
So you can pass only class. Got your point. So you have worked with Angular 13, right?
Right.
So what are the major changes that has introduced in Angular 13?
I haven't explored them on particular thing, but yes, Angular. If we talk about Angular 2 onwards, so it supports every like object-oriented programming, like in which we can write dependency injections in type scripting things, and we can use interceptor for the header thing.
Okay.
So these kind of things are there.
But this is a part of TypeScript, right? It is not part of
Right.
Angular. TypeScript support interface. Angular, like by default, support TypeScript, so it supports interface. What about Angular? So do you think any specific thing that are newly introduced in recent days with Angular 13?
Sorry, so I haven't explored about it much.
Okay, got it. So in Angular, we can see like lot of lifecycle hooks, right? So can you tell me one use cases of ng on changes and ng on init?
In most of the scenarios, I have worked on ng on init. It's one of the lifecycle hook, and it is being used through interface. Like we need to implement it because we before we use it in the components class, and then for ng on init, it fires after the constructor of the component, and whatever we need to do before the DOM gets ready, we can work on it. Like we can use subscriptions in the ng on init, And then ng on changes is related to the form changes. Like whatever we change in the form, it captures that change.
It's not about forms, it's basically input type changes. Even if you have a
Yes.
small text box in input,
Yeah.
then also it will be like it will be hit and you can do your necessary thing. So for where exactly you are calling service, is it from a constructor or is it from ng on changes or is it from your ng on init?
If I talk about reactive forms in Angular, I prefer to initialize it in the constructor instead of ng on init. And for services, I used to do di of service in the constructor and then call it. It depends. Suppose I have a page and I need to load some data and show it in the grid. So then I'll be calling it in the ng on init of the component. And if I need to do some add, update something, then I'll be calling the services on the click of the buttons, or even on the click, even if any emitter is there. So it depends.
Okay, got it. So have you ever created a shared module in Angular?
Yes, one of them was to register material components. Like we have material drop downs and then the text boxes. So for that I have used a shared module. I generally don't load it on the app module. I just load it where the other module is required. Like if I talk about folder structure of the Angular, I can create folder for each and every of the module, and every module can, like module I mean the section of the application, and every that section can have its own module. It's just provides the lazy loading kind of thing, like instead of loading each and everything on the first load of the application, instead of this only the required chunk of modules can be loaded.
Okay,
And
got it. Only the common functionality you can push it, right?
Right,
Inside a
right,
specific
right,
one.
right.
Got it. Or have you ever created any shared library in Angular?
No.
Do you know like why we create shared libraries?
Shared libraries. Sorry, so maybe I'm not aware with this term.
So suppose let's assume a scenario like you are creating an application and that application has to use by some other else. Okay, small chunk of application you are creating. So maybe you are creating a say like to show a map. Okay, so you are creating you will create a shared library or your library you will create, and you can publish it to npm or you can directly share it with the code. They can just import your library and they can show the specific like chart or graph whatever you have
Yes,
created.
yes. I have worked with Leaflet. I had one of my assignments in which I have to show. It's basically a vehicle tracking system. So I have integrated a Leaflet in which vehicle is being shown all over the map, like wherever is the vehicle and how much distance it is traveling. So I have used Leaflet for it. And other than this, Angular material for data tables and all.
So since you're talking about Angular material, in Angular material, what are the major functions that you have used?
If I like what I have worked on is using the data tables. So they provide sorting, pagination, even filtering. So these kind of things I have worked with.
Okay, so have you used stepper by any chance in Angular material?
Stepper, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4 to show a wizard kind of UI. User needs to fill in the first form and then user clicks on next and can navigate in between those steppers.
Okay, got it. So how well versed you are in RxJX? Do you know RxJX?
These are the operators. Like we have map operator, pipe operator.
Yeah, so RxJS basically is a library. So inside that we have multiple operators, right?
Right.
So have you ever worked with fork join or like?
Yes.
So
Yes.
why we
There
use fork join?
was a single scenario which came like which we had a requirement for it. So fork join is to send multiple requests, and these are the sequential requests. Like first request just hits the API, gets the response, and then second request goes and receives the response. So I have used fork join once in a while. Yeah.
Okay, but this is not the proper use case of a fork join. So suppose let's assume a scenario where you need to call multiple API in one shot. So there you can use a fork join. Suppose let's assume a scenario that you have say 10 drop down, and that 10 drop down is populating with 10 endpoint. So basically you will not call one API one by one, right? So you can use
Right.
you can create an array basically of those
Yes.
endpoints, and you can
Correct.
call and you will get all 10 data in one shot.
Yes.
That is
I had a requirement to post collectively some files. We can say 5 or 10.
right. That
files.
that might be one good use cases.
Yeah. Yes. I have used for it.
Okay, fine. So coming to the API, so you are talking about JWT you have implemented, right?
Yes.
So can you tell me what is the claim in JWT?
Claim is basically an object in which we use to encrypt user data. Like we can add user ID, users, or whatever the required values we need for a user to show on the UI. Suppose the user logs in that case, I need like user ID, user's image, user's first name, last name, like not to hit API back again and again. I used to enclose user related, like logged in user related data in the claim, and then on successful login we used to decrypt it, and we can keep it in local storage, or we can use any service file to hold that data and show it in the UI. Like it's like as per the use case, while building SaaS applications, so we need to set and show some user logged in related data. So for that, claims is used.
Okay.
Even in API, we can use current session to fetch user ID, like not to fetch it from UI always. We don't need to pass it from the UI to see the logged in users data, especially the user ID if user is working on or doing any CRUD operations. So we used to use that claim part in the API to extract the user ID and do the things.
Okay, got it. So what is content negotiator in your API?
What is? Sorry, sir.
Have you heard about content negotiator?
No, sir.
So don't you used iAction result or HTTP response message in your
Yes,
API?
I have used.
Those are basically example of content negotiator.
Okay. So
Basically, yeah.
aware.
So what will happen in API if you are calling a say like with the media type or with your expectant, we normally call it say return a JSON, right? Application slash JSON. So based on that, if you have used in your API, say action result or HTTP response, you will return JSON.
JSON, yes.
And if you like request for XML, it will return the XML. So you need not to write a specific code just to convert XML to JSON. That is a content negotiation between your UI and your API.
Okay.
So possibly you have used it, but you haven't heard this term, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So have you like handled CORS in your API? CORS?
CORS.
Yeah.
Pre-flight. We used to get console errors regarding pre-flight
Right.
response.
Right.
Yes, sir. I have worked with it. While configuring identity server 4, basically, I have tackled this situation many times. We used to get these errors like when Angular attempts to communicate with API, it usually throws CORS. So for that, we need to whitelist the origins, like which origins can consume the API URL.
Okay. So apart from this, you are talking about, I think, domain, right? So apart from this domain, what else can cause this CORS error?
Actually, I have just encountered this CORS error. Yeah, just because of the domain.
Okay,
And
fine. I mean, it is domain, and then your like port number, and one more thing, your like both should be in similar like protocol. If you are using HTTP, it should be HTTP. It is HTTPS and HTTPS. Both of them should be same. Your UI and API.
Same, right? So
these three is like considered as CORS. Okay. So one more scenario. Let's assume like I am a user, valid user to your application, but my intention is wrong. So what I will do, I will log into your system, and there is a specific button. So let's assume to generate a like PDF file. So I'll click that particular button again and again. Okay. So because I just wanted to like slow down your system. So can you provide a solution by which we can restrict these types of scenario? Though I am a valid user, I have I have authentication. stuff present?
Mm, in end users, if I talk about for end users, and if I click any button, suppose it's going to take a bit of time to complete the request, I will go with the loader or the spinner to show on the screen, so that user should not click that button again, and user should know that something is going behind, and because of that.
Okay, so like
response is
from
taking
UI perspective, we'll try to implement a loader, right?
loader, right?
Okay, fine. So now coming to your so Azure, what are the service that you have used? Can you please repeat again? You have
It was the Hangfire. It was used for scheduling things, like if I need to schedule some emails or something. So I have used a Hangfire.
okay, and any other services?
No,
And you haven't worked with it like AWS as well, right?
not much.
Okay, fine. Just a second. Okay, so so coming to SQL, you worked with both SQL Server and MySQL, right?
Right.
So can you tell me like why we create like say SQL view, views in SQL in a specific reason?
It is to store some results temporarily. It's only a tabular form, which we need to write some SQL queries according to our requirements. Suppose I need to set some multiple joins, or I used to put that result in the view, and then I can consume it. It is for faster access, like it fasters the performance of the application.
Okay. So what if you are trying to like update or trying to write a delete operation in view, what will happen?
I haven't worked with that scenario. I just worked views to retrieve the results.
No, so suppose like what is your thought? Suppose you are trying to say like update view name set. Just try to update a table. Similar syntax if you write for a view, what may happen? It will fail or it will try to update the underlying table, or what may happen?
Pardon, I did not get you.
So suppose you are trying to say update, like write a update statement on a view.
Okay.
So what do you think? Like it will tries to update particular table, or it will throw an error saying with the view you cannot basically update as it is a virtual table?
I can't say about it, so because I haven't.
You haven't encountered this situation, right?
Yeah, I haven't encountered this situation.
Okay.
I just used views to retrieve the results, like for grids. So I haven't did any add or update on view like this, like update query.
Okay. So suppose let's assume like you need to retrieve second highest salary from a table. So what will be your query?
Sorry, so I know it is the. I mean, I can't recall it.
No, it's not about recalling. Look, suppose like if you need to someone needs to like tell you to write this query, how you write? There's a lot of way. You can use top, you can use max, you can use limit, you can use group by rank. There will be a 10 option to write this query.
I have seen this query. It was not in my requirements or something, but I have seen it like max being used there to get the second highest salary. But I don't remember the exact query.
Okay, you can write a subquery with maybe max, and then you can select top two, then you can take the max, so it will show the second one. So maybe you need to write a subquery. Fine. So I have pasted one table. Can you just check whether you can see it or not? Just a second, I sent it. Can you paste it in your window? So it is broken, right?
Right.
Okay, so can you just paste, just give a enter, and then you have 3 data, then you can do more one more enter, I think.
3, 4, 5.
How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, after 5. I'm not sure it's
this, but number cannot be employee number.
I'll leave it like I think somehow it is broken, so you cannot basically explain. So can you write a simple query to like say find a duplicate data from a table?
Duplicate data?
Yeah. So suppose inside one table you have duplicate data. So how can you figure out that there is a duplicate data using a small query?
Suppose employee is the table where employee name is not
Yeah, so let's assume the employee name is duplicate. Okay, so there is employee who is duplicate, whose name is duplicate. So how can you show the, like, say, employee name and the count, how many times they are duplicated?
count star maybe.
Yeah, so you write the employee name comma count star.
Yeah.
Now you can try to finish the query. You can remove the where clause.
Sorry, sir, I didn't get you.
You can remove the where clause. Entire where
Where
stuff.
clause?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now try to finish the, like, query.
But then in where I need to pass employee's name.
No, so you don't know the name, right? So maybe 10 employees can be duplicated, right? So how can you mention one employee's name?
Okay.
So there might be 10 employees where their name is duplicated.
Name count star from employee. Sorry, sir.
So SQL, you have issue with the SQL. You are good at like Angular and then .NET, but it is a very easy query. Like you need to put a group by name. You can write group by, then
I was assuming it.
yeah. So just put a group by and then employee name. That's
employee
it.
name.
Yeah. And if you like put like maybe you can add a having clause, having count star greater than 1, so that it will show the duplicate data.
Okay, sir. Got it.
So what is the difference between delete and truncate?
Delete only removes the records. It does not empties the index. Like suppose I have 10 records in the table and I delete the records, and then if I insert a new record, the ID will start from 11 index, and truncate empties the data as well as the indexes of the table.
Okay, so can we revert the delete or truncate operation?
No, sir, I haven't encountered this requirement and I haven't tried it.
Okay, so we cannot revert the truncate operation, but delete can be reverted because it keeps a log basically. If you write a dbcc command, you can still get the accidentally deleted data.
Okay.
That's what delete is slow because it keeps a log. Truncate is fast.
Okay.
What about candidate key? Have you heard about candidate key?
No, I have heard about primary, unique, and foreign keys, but I didn't get a chance to work with candidate key.
Okay, so suppose you are creating say a non-clustered index or a class, maybe a clustered and a non-clustered. So how can you relate with primary and unique key? Suppose you are creating a say clustered index. So do you get a primary key or a unique key?
I think primary key.
Primary key for what? Non-clustered or clustered?
It's for clustered index, I guess.
And what about non-clustered? If you create a non-clustered index?
Actually, I'm just confusing between both maybe.
Okay, no, it's fine. Like if you create a non-clustered, you will get a unique key basically. Okay. Unique key is basically non-clustered and primary is a clustered.
Okay, sir. Actually, I just know that primary key is the unique value, like the single value, and unique keys can be multiple on the same table.
Right.
Primary key will have only unique value.
Right. Primary and unique both should contain unique value, but one problem is you can have multiple unique key in the table and you can have one null value inside unique key. You cannot have null inside primary key, right?
Right.
Okay, fine. So, so what about the operating system like Windows and Linux? Have you ever worked with Linux?
No.
Linux you didn't.
There was a requirement that I had to deploy one of the Blazor project to the Linux, and for that, that did not work because a client was not having some client was having some server issues, but for that I was supposed to add Docker in the application
Okay.
for containerization.
Mhm.
But then we didn't work much on it. But I know for Linux we need to add Docker to make .NET Core work there.
Okay.
So
So
this much I
even
know.
even you can use Docker for desktop, right? If it is for Windows, but Docker normally like we normally use Linux for Docker.
Right.
It is faster even than
Right.
Windows. So have you ever configured IIS and Apple and like these types of stuff in Windows Server?
No, sir. Regarding Apple, we had some issue. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but then there was some session issue or something. But for that, I have figured out that it was related to the app pool, and then I need to do some configuration. It's been
So what will happen if you recycle the Apple?
it just empties all the requests. I think. I mean, it's been a time that, but I have
Okay.
worked on it.
No, fine. So it will basically like destroy all the current session. Apple will hold the user session basically, all the current user
Yes,
session.
yes,
Okay. So have you used Jira by any chance?
yes. Task management tool. Yes.
Task and like for defect tracking you are using Jira, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay, fine. So that is I think all from my side. So do you have any question?